Thank you. That's almost too much on a Sunday morning. It's wonderful. Thank you. And I want to thank everybody. Last time I was here, April 3rd, my birthday, I got an ovation for being born. How cool is that? I'm going to talk today about gratitude. And it took me a whole lot of years to find out why I should be grateful. Think back, those who can remember, late 60s, I was getting ready to break into the workforce. My father, the salesman, said, you need to read some good books. Power of Positive Thinking, Think and Grow Rich. These are the mindset, this is the mindset you need to succeed in this world. I said, okay, Dad. And I got some books and I started reading all about that. And I said, yes, I can see it. I can do it. I'm in charge. It's all about me. I'm going to go out there and make it happen. So I went out there and it sort of happened. Now, a couple years ago, I was invited to give or to be part of a video podcast that was going to be shown on cable. And it was a lot of fun, and there were a lot of questions. And then finally, the last question was, what are you grateful for? And I said, I don't know. I don't know if I need to be grateful. Everything in my life happened because of me, because I read those books in the 60s. Now, a couple months ago, UCLA Oral History Library said, Kusala, we would like to interview you for the library. We're doing a section on Buddhism in Los Angeles, and we'd like to get your thoughts, your life, what you think you've contributed to Buddhism in Los Angeles. And I said, okay, that sounds like fun. It was 5 weeks. It was like going through intensive therapy, going back and trying to remember everything that ever happened to you from birth until now, the good, the bad, and of course the indifferent, the stuff that really doesn't catch you. So I'm sitting there and the question comes up again. What are you grateful for? And this time, I think I had a better answer. I said, I have come to the conclusion that I am grateful because I recognize all things are interconnected and interdependent. That nothing ever happens by itself. Everything I thought I did, I had a whole bunch of people and circumstances helping me along. Of course, I was blind to that because I kept looking at me as being the sole source of all my success or failure. But in fact, after 20 or 30 years of meditation, I finally came to the conclusion that for the relative reality, to honor the ultimate reality, we need to be grateful. We need gratitude. So I thought back in my life, who helped me? Now, I have 2 birth certificates. I have one when I was born physically, and then I have my ordination certificate when I was born spiritually. And so I thought back to the second birth certificate. After that, who was important in my life? And the first name that came to mind was Houston Smith. Now, you may not know who he is. He was a cool guy. And he wrote a book called The Religions of Man when I read it, later to be called World Religions, which I think is probably more appropriate. And I had a chance to meet him at UCLA. He was giving a talk. I was working there at the time as an on-campus chaplain. And we were all invited to go hear him speak. And before he spoke, I had a chance to talk to him. I sat down. And he was sort of an old guy by then. He must have been in his 80s or so. But he had that sparkle in his eye. You could tell he had a good life. And I said to him, "You're the reason I became a Buddhist." Now, he's not a Buddhist. And what did he do? He had the biggest smile on his face. I said, "I read that book, and I read the chapter on Buddhism twice. And that's why I'm dressed the way I am today. Because of your book." And he smiled again. So he was an important person in my life, though he never realized it until that moment. The second person who was important in my life was Shinzen Young. Now, Shinzen Young has an interesting story. He went to UCLA to study Asian languages, and then he went to the University of Wisconsin to work on his PhD, and then he went to Japan to study Japanese firsthand, and then he got ordained as a Shingon monk. And I met him in 1979 at the International Buddhist Meditation Center, where he was the vice abbot and I now live. Now, we connected because English was his first language. English is my only language. And he sort of looked like a Caucasian white guy wearing a Buddhist monk's robes. And I said, "Okay, white guys can be monks." That was important to me. But before I heard him speak, I had to meditate. It was the punishment before the dessert. And I would sit there and I would just be so uncomfortable, physically and mentally, wondering what the heck this was all about. And then he would give his Dharma talk. And he spoke in a way that stimulated me to look at the world in a different way. Apparently, he could see things that I never even realized existed. He talked about the transparency of a wall. Now, I'm looking at the wall, and it looks pretty solid to me. I'm thinking, does he see through that wall because he meditates? That was one of his powers. And actually, years later, I came to understand it's the concepts he's talking about. The concept of a wall is transparent. It really has nothing to do at all with the wall itself. But in the beginning, those concepts were far, far above me. But he got me thinking, and he got me to want to see the world in the way he did. Now, at that point, Zen, meditation, chanting. He went to India and took a Goenka retreat and came back transformed. Now it's Vipassana, insight, mindfulness. I couldn't keep up with him. He was evolving much too fast for me. I was still at level 1. So I remember going up to him and saying, "Can you recommend a good Buddhist monk?" He said, "Yeah, there's one right down the street, Crenshaw Boulevard. Dr. Havanpola Ratnasara from Sri Lanka, elder. He can help you." So I left Shinzen because I wasn't where he was at, and I went to Dr. Ratnasara. Now, Dr. Ratnasara was a fascinating man, and unfortunately, in life, sometimes you learn much more about the person after they're dead. And you sort of wish you knew it while they were alive so you could talk to them. Hey, that was so cool. But I couldn't. At the age of 11, his parents gave him to the monastery to be a monk. So he had been a monk his whole life. I met him in 1983. He died at the age of 80 in 2000. In 1957, he was the representative to the United Nations for Sri Lanka, the first Buddhist monk ever to be a representative in the United Nations. He also got his PhD in England. When he got here in Los Angeles, 1980, he started the Buddhist Catholic Dialogue with Monsignor Royal Vatican. He started the Buddhist Sangha Council of Southern California, which was comprised of monks from different traditions who came together to speak about philosophy, problems in the monastery, getting building permits in Los Angeles, all the important stuff. He also started the College of Buddhist Studies, which I ended up going to. And I was not very good in school. I was actually happy to get out of school because I didn't know the importance of school. Nobody ever told me that learning math was important. They just said you had to do it because everybody does it. And I would say, but what's the point? How often will I use algebra? I can understand addition and subtraction, maybe division once in a while. But then, years and years later, after I left school, I understood that you go to school not to learn stuff, but to learn how to think about stuff, how to understand it, how to use it to your advantage. So I'm in the College of Buddhist Studies. That's where I got my BA in Buddhist Studies. And he was my spiritual father at that time. I was with him from 1983 to 2000. And I can remember in 1993, he said, "Did you ever think about becoming a monk?" He says, "Your life isn't very full right now. You don't have a girlfriend." He said, "You could do some important stuff if you were a monk." But I said, "Dr. Ratnasara, that means I can't have sex." And he just chuckled. Because he had never had sex, and he always wondered what the big deal was. So I said, well, let me think about it. So in 1993, I started the ordination process and became a postulant. In 1994, I took the vows of a novice monk. In 1996, I became fully ordained. And then 5 years later, I got a certificate and a red robe saying I could now start my own center, or I could take on students, or I could just stay at the center where I now live and just sort of do the work there. So that's what I did. I stayed there and did the work. But if it wasn't for him giving me an example of traditional Buddhist monasticism, if it wasn't for him speaking to me in a very personal, guy-to-guy way about the realities of living in this world, which is really ultimately unsatisfactory, according to Buddhism. It doesn't ever get better. Every time I drive up to Ventura, I'm hoping it's going to be better. But you know what? After all these years, it never gets better. My life is pretty much the same way. I had somebody the other day say, but Kusala, what are you trying to do now? How are you trying to be better? I said, I've given up trying to be better. I'm just going to try to maintain what I already have and not lose it right now. I'm just going to hold on to it as long as I can because I know the years ahead of me are going to get a little more challenging. I know that today may be the best day I'm ever going to have. You know? And I'm grateful for that. Now, in 1998, another man came into my life. His name is Jeff Gold. You may or may not have heard of him. He started as a salesman at Rhino Records on Westwood Boulevard in Westwood Village. Just been open. He was one of the first salesmen. He went from there to A&M Records, and then he went to Warner Brother Records, and then he retired in 1998 as a young man. And his passion was collecting vinyl, rare vinyl, and selling it or trading it or just finding out about it. And somehow, through a friend named Susan, I came in contact with him. And we started talking, and he said, "You need a computer, man." I said, "Really? You think so?" He says, "That's what the future's going to be all about, those darn computers, and you don't have one." I said, "Well, they're sort of expensive, and I've never used a computer." He said, "I will buy you a computer, but you have to pay me back." I said, "Well, okay. You can take as long as you want. I'm not going to charge you any interest, but you got to pay me back." I said, "Okay." So I got an iMac in Bondi blue, and it was the coolest thing I had ever seen. There were little people inside there talking to me. I couldn't believe it. And then I got a phone modem connection to the internet. And it changed my life. I said, I'm going to have my own personal page on the internet. And it took me a couple weeks to figure out how to put a page. No graphics. I don't even remember what the font was on the text. It was just me and my address, and that was it. And I looked at it online, and I was so proud. I had done it. I'm now on the internet. I'm now part of the new world. How cool. And from there, I went to, well, maybe I can do a website. And a friend of mine gave me Dreamweaver 2. He had upgraded to Dreamweaver 3. And I said, okay, now I got to learn this. Thankfully, I'm at a meditation center. I don't have a whole lot of responsibilities. I could spend hours every day teaching myself how to make a website. And I did. And that was in 2001, I posted that website. It was a couple pages. I even had graphics that I manipulated to fit into the page. I was really proud of that as well. Now, today, how many pages do I have on that little website? I have over 2,500 pages in Urban Dharma. Just because Jeff Gold said, you need a computer. I have podcasts on iTunes. Every month, over 100,000 are downloaded. Because Jeff Gold said, you need a computer. I'm on Facebook. I have 5,000 friends. Just because Jeff Gold said, you need a computer. Wow. How cool. So much to be grateful for. And then Reverend Karuna. Now, Reverend Karuna met Thich Thich Nhat in the late 60s at UCLA. He's the founder of our meditation center. In 1994, she had a stroke. And it affected her physically and a little mentally as well. But she continued to run the International Buddhist Meditation Center because in 1980, when Thich Thich Nhat passed away, she was voted to take over. Nobody else wanted to do it. They wanted to have a life. Reverend Karuna, you get the meditation center. Good luck. She kept it going. We had people coming and going all the time. And you might wonder what the function of a meditation center is. It's to heal people. Now, people come to our meditation center and say, you know what, it hasn't changed in 25 years. It looks exactly the same. And I say to them, yes, it does, but the people that came here have changed. And that's the most important part. A lot of people have mental illness. Not the kind we traditionally think of, but a lot of people are in between jobs and they're trying to figure out what to do next. And so they need to take a little retreat, move into a place that doesn't have a lot of pressure, might find some friendship, do a little meditation. Sometimes people get divorced and they're sort of lost. One half of them is gone now. And they don't know what to do. And so they come to the meditation center for a little while. Sometimes people have spiritual insights that drive them nuts. They can't put it into any category. They've never experienced it before. They talk to their friends and family. They don't know what the heck they're talking about. So they come to the meditation center and they go, oh, sure, no problem. That happens on Tuesday, every Tuesday right here. That happens. So they find this little home where they can heal and become whole again and feel good about their mental space. It's okay. They're not crazy. They've just had some transcendent experiences that the relative reality, our society, doesn't have room for, doesn't identify them as being useful or positive. But if you have a spiritual practice, you know those things are the most useful and the most positive, because they give you a way to look at yourself and your relationship to everything else in a very transcendent and wholesome way, a good way. But Reverend Karuna, I really never understood. I would listen to her Dharma, and it wasn't the kind of stuff that I was sort of attracted to, because I liked the stuff that Dr. Ratnasara talked about. Early Buddhism. You got to sit under a tree until it hurts. You might get to be an arhat one day, but don't try to be a bodhisattva. There's no need to be a bodhisattva. Get enlightened. Achieve nirvana. Today's the day. I like that idea. In the Mahayana tradition, it talks about being a bodhisattva, being of service to all sentient beings, before you achieve your own release from suffering. And I never thought that would be the path I would take. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to end my suffering. Now, to be honest with you, I wasn't suffering until I came to Buddhism. Because I thought everything was okay and that's the way it's supposed to be, you know? And then Buddhism says, no, it can be better. You're deluded, you're ignorant, you don't see things as they really are. And I thought to myself, wow, my whole life I haven't seen things the way they really are. And then I started to wake up. But I had to jump into the suffering first and understand what it meant to have impermanence all around me, to have suffering all around me. Not to be the person I thought I was, but simply a process that occurred because I have a mind and a body. So it took a while. And then Reverend Karuna would go in her bodhisattva way, and Dr. Ratnasara would go in his arahant way. And I thought to myself, you know what? I am so American. I think like a Catholic and dress like a Protestant. So Reverend Karuna was the last person that I have gratitude for. And it took me up until the interview with UCLA to understand why I should be grateful to Reverend Karuna, because I worked for her. She said, when I took my novice ordination, we'd like to have you on staff. We'd like you to quit your job and you can work for us. And we have a residential program, and you can be the residential manager and find people to occupy the rooms. And if the rooms need to be painted, you can be the guy that paints them. And I said, well, okay, it sounds good. I won't have to go on the freeway. I won't have to work. And so I left work and took on a lifestyle, 24/7. See, when you have a lifestyle, you can't go on vacation. There's no place to go where your lifestyle doesn't follow you. So people say, aren't you happy about the weekend? Well, not really. So I was working for Reverend Karuna, and I was painting rooms, and I was fining people, and then they would come in and they wouldn't pay the rent, and I'd have to talk to them about paying rent. And then we had animals, and they said, well, you know, Kusala, because you're a residential manager, you get to take care of the animals. And I go, wow, cool, dogs, cats, fish, birds. I was the feeder. I was the guy. They got sick, I would help them get better. But I still couldn't figure out why I should be grateful to Reverend Karuna. Because she gave me a job, but other people have given me jobs in the past. I wasn't really grateful to them because it's work. And that's why they pay you, you know. So then it dawned on me. Then I thought about her. She didn't fire me. She let me stay there in a room and not pay rent. She said, we'll give you some health insurance just in case you get sick so you don't have to die. And we'll give you some money each month so you can buy new socks and a couple meals and just, you know, and then you just work for us. She gave me a place to practice. She gave me a place to make a lot of mistakes and have some success. She let me be a big fish in a small pond. She allowed me to evolve as a Buddhist monk. And if you live in the world, you can't do that. You have too many other responsibilities. She took away all those responsibilities and said, okay, work on yourself. And I did. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, working on myself. Still got some work to do. Not there yet. Not a Buddha yet. I say that every night before I go to sleep. Not a Buddha yet. So as I look back, and I see all the people, circumstances, situations that have stimulated me to go into a direction of good mental health, to go into a direction of being of service to others. The community service I've done for 20 years and continue to do, the talks I've given, the way I've talked about myself, the way I talk about myself succeeding and failing, instead of talking about other people succeeding and failing. All those things came about because I read that book. And there were a whole lot of people along the way willing to help me, whether they knew they were helping me or not, because I didn't know they were helping me until just a few months ago. And so now, not only do I say, not a Buddha yet, but I also say, wow, I'm thankful I got this far. I'm thankful I got as far as I did, and I still got a couple years to go. So I still got more work to do. I have more things to do, and I have less time. Because I'm old. And when you have less time, what I have found is this. Every day becomes important. Every day there's a certain undercurrent of urgency to get things done. Because you don't know how much more time you have to get things done. And then I'm looking forward to the day when it's all done. And I can just sit there and say, it's all done. That may happen in my next lifetime. But in this lifetime, I still got a lot of stuff to do. Now, the recognition that we are all interconnected and interdependent. And everything that happens to you is not necessarily because of you. You might say God, you might say the universe, you might say good karma, or just some good luck. But there it is. So I have come to the conclusion I cannot accept the praise, and I cannot accept all the blame, just some of it. Thank you for listening. Yeah, we go. Yeah.